Hello everyone, welcome back. This is part 6 of our full free React crash course that we're going to start from scratch and end in Pro React Developer, which in this video we're going to talk about states in React. Here we got our React project with our main file and app.js as our entry point in React and our project running inside in this browser. Now let's jump into the video. Now we got question of what is state. State in React refers to an object that stores components dynamic data and actually it's kinda remembers user inputs, track chains, and keeps everything in sync with the UI. What I mean is let's say here we got our simple app component right here and here let's say we have this variable of score right here that we want to show in our UI. Let's say at first it's 12. Now here in the return part, we're going to have this simple h1 right here, which says that score is, then we want to use the variable that we have, which in JSX, we use these curly braces right here, and then the name of our variable. And by this, you can see that we got our results right here. And if we change anything right here in our code, it's going to change in our UI. But what is going to happen if we want to change this score number here in the UI? What we can do is having this button right here, which let's say we want add 1 right here. And here we got this unclick. And here we want to use our add function, which we're going to create. And if we want to explain what this line, well, we have our default button tag right here. Then we got this unclick attribute right here, which is going to take the name of our function right here. And pay attention, here we don't want to call our function, we simply pass the name. And let's actually here create our function right here. So I'm going to use arrow function right here. And here, let's say when we clicked on this +1 button that we got right here, we want to have our score to increment by 1 level. And then let's say we want to console log our score. Now if we open our console right here, you can see at first it's empty, but now if we click on this one, you can see our variable have been incremented by 1 level and here we got this number 13, but here in our UI and our web page, it's still showing number 12. Because when our React application is going to render this component, it's going to run all of these items, and because we have not called this add and score is 12, it's going to come to this return part, and here it has the value of 12 and it has not changed. And when we adding this, of course, we're changing this score right here, and when we console log that, we got the new number here, but this has already been rendered and it's not going to change. And here is where our states comes in, which if we use states, it's going to increment here as well as we got right here in the console. For using states in our applications, first thing that we need to have is importing this hook of useState from React. And by this, we can access to the states. And pay attention, state is an object, but we need to define that object right here. So instead of that simple variable that we got, we're going to create our state. If you use this useState, you can see it has its automatic template right here that you can use. But here we're going to start simply by coding all along the template that you saw. So here first we're going to define it. We're using const here. It's going to have these brackets right here, which here is going to receive 2 parameters from us. First one is the name of the states, and second one is the name of the function which is going to change the state's value for us. For example, in our case, it's going to have the name of score right here, and then the function is going to be anything that we want, but it's common when we want to name this function about this variable. We use simply set at the first and then name of our variable. So we got score as our dynamic value and set score as our function to change values of score variable. And here is where we're going to use this use state right here, which is function, and it's going to receive the default value that we want our state to have. For example, here you can see it's null. If we pass this 0, you can see at first it's 0. If we have this, for example, number 4, you can see it starts with 4 and going on. And now if we come here and instead of this score, we simply want to check the type of this, you can see here we got the type of number. Pay attention, state is object that's holding our variables for us, but this variable is going to hold this number. So the type of this score that we have is going to be this value right here. And if we have, for example, string here, you can see we got this string. And of course, we can have some arrays right here. Let's say this has some numbers inside of that. And because arrays are going to shown as object in JS, it's going to show us the object. But again, if we want to print that, you can see we can have that. And we can have objects here too. And actually, we can have any data type that we want. For example, let's say as previous one, we got this value of 12 as start. Then we got our add function right here, which is going to change a little different. You see here, if we add this, nothing is going to happen because we have not used this set score method and function that we have here. So instead of adding like this, we're going to use this set score right here, which is a function. And what value we pass right here, it's going to apply and change our score to that. For example, if we want to change that to number 15, and if we get rid of this console log because we don't need that, if we click here, you can see it changed to this number 15. If we want to change this to number 18, if we click, you can see it has changed to number 18. But pay attention, this is static value, and if we click again, it's still going to show us and be this 18. And how we're going to increment that is here, instead of using this 18, we're going to grab the value that score currently has, which we can use by this score variable that we have. And here we increment that and we pass that to this set score. So here, for example, in this case, the score currently is 18. So we're going to grab this 18 right here, add that what we want, or you can use this kind, it doesn't matter. And then the value right here is going to be 19, and we pass set score the value of 19. But this have the dynamic control of our state. So if we click here, you can see it's 19. If we click again, we got 20 and going up. And for example, if we want to make that -1, for example, let's say we have this -1 button right here. And here, let's say instead of this add, we got this minus right here. And if we want to have that minus function, we simply copy this. We put the name to the minus right here. And instead of +1, we use -1 right here. And by this, you can see that here, this is going to add 1 to the number that we have, and this is going to -1 from that number. And pay attention, here we have the start value of 12. If we make this number 0, you can see it starts from the 0, and we can go actually to the negative values and come to the positive ones, and we can change this how we want, and it's going to work. Which this is a simple counter app by React and useState. But we have two types of components in React. This was a function component and more common one. But we have our class components too. And the way that we're going to use states in class components are a little bit different from functions. So let's say here at first we have this simple class component of app that we got right here, and we want to do exactly the same thing that we created with functional component in class component too. So at the first, you know that we need to import this component. So we use inheritance right here. Then here in the render part, we're going to return this simple div, which says app right here, which we're going to change this to this fragment. Then here we want to have our h1. We have this score. Then here we're going to have state. Let's say at first we stay with this 12. And below of this, we're going to have our buttons, which are going to be +1 and -1 right here. So for creating states in class components, we don't need to import anything from any library and dependency. What we need to do above of this render function that we have, we're going to create our constructor. So here we have our constructor, which is function as you know if you have watched in our JS crash course, which I'm going to give the link to that part too in the description. And here we're going to create our states. Here in the constructor, because as I told you, state is an object in component class, so it's going to be object in this component class, and because we want to use that, we have to use this super right here, which is simple JavaScript right here, and then after this, we can access to the component class and do the things that we want, which in our case is creating state. So here we use this keyword right here and we target this state object that we have. And then here we can create what state that we want. For example, in our case, we want to create this score and we want the value to have 12 at the start. And here, if you want to have multiple states, you can create another one right here. For example, let's say we have another name right here, which let's say we start with the name of Jack right here. We can have any number of states that we want right here. But as you noticed here, we don't going to define the function that we usually going to do. And changing the state's value is again different than functional components state management. And for changing those values, what we need to do, first, let's create the functions that we want to run. Then we click on these buttons. And for creating those functions, we can create our functions right here. Pay attention, here we can use our simply function name right here. For example, let's say this increase, then we have our parentheses and our curly brace. But when we want to use this inside of our button, for example, let's say here this has this simple alert of test right here. If we want to use this in this button, the way that we're going to import our functions in class components is going to be here we got as same as our functional one, the onClick, but here we should use this keyword and refer to that function that we created. And you can see here if we click, it runs. But because we're going to use states right here, and pay attention, states not in our class and it's in component class that we're going to inherit that. So because of that, here we need to use our arrow functions because arrow functions automatically bind this to the class instance. So you can define the increase method as an arrow function and that can refer to state. If we don't use arrow function and use the function to change the state for us, which is going to be this keyword at the first because we want to access the object of states, it's going to refer to this class instead of this one. And for creating that mistake, here we can use arrow functions, which we simply use these marks right here and this changed to arrow function. And then here we got our function to change the states, which as I told you is different than functional one. So here we're going to use the set state function right here, which this time instead of passing the new value, we're going to pass object to this, which this one holds the name of the state that we want to change. For example, here, let's say we want to change this score. So we got this score and then the new value. Let's say the new value is 18. And here, let's actually change this 12 to dynamically our state, which if we use this score as previous functional component, you can see this is not working. And the way that we're going to use this is again having this keyword at start, then we're going to have this state, and then we can access state that we have. Now you can see right here, if we click on this +1 button, it's going to change this to 18. And if we want to make this dynamic, pay attention here again, we can't use this score plus plus because this is not going to work. What we need to do to access to our state in anywhere of our code, we need to have this keyword to refer to the class that we're working on. Then we use this state, and then we use the name of our state. And here we can add one value to this item right here. And you can see this time this is working. And pay attention, when I told you we're using this to refer to our class, we don't want to refer to this class. Actually, we want to refer to this class. And that is why if we use simple functions right here, we cannot do that items. And for having decrease button, again, we're going to have this unclick that we got right here, but instead of this increase, we're going to have decrease right here. And we're going to copy this method that we created just right here. And instead of adding 1, we're going to have -1. Now, if we use this, it's going to add 1 to our score. And if we use this, it's going to -1 from our number that we have. And of course, because we have another state right here, we can use that one too. So here we use another curly braces right here. We want access to the state, so we use this keyword, then the state, and the name that is the name of our states. And then let's say we have this right here. So we got this Jack's score is 12. And actually, let's have another button right here with the name of change name to, let's say, Tom. And here we don't have this function. So let's create that. Let's say we want to make the name of our function to change name. So we need to use arrow function here again because we want to use set state in this function. And here we use exactly this to refer to the component class. Then we have the set state method that I told you. And here we're going to pass object, which we want to change the name to the new value, which in our case is going to be this Tom. And now let's pass the name right here. So we're going to use again this because in this case, when we use this, we're going to target and refer to this app class that we have. And inside of that, we got this change name. So we use this dot and this change name method. And here you can see if we click on this, now it's Tom's score. And we can change the score here too. And pay attention, here we got another point that is very common mistakes in using states in class components, which having this double plus or double minus right here. You know that we have this to increment only one level and any variable that we have, which we had used this in functional component, but here this is not going to work. So you cannot use this kind of accessing to the state and add by having these two plus signs. Instead, you need to manually put +1 right here as same as this one. You can see this is not working and you need to manually put this -1 right here. And pay attention, we use states whenever that we want dynamic values in our UI, which are going to change based on the behavior of our user interacting in the web page. So if he has only this web page and he wants to change these items, change names, and we want to give access to that user, we're going to use states. And pay attention, we can have states as props, so the other components inside of our main component can access to that item too. For example, let's say here we have another file right here with the name of this simple card.jsx. which here we're going to have our simple functional component, and we want to use that here in our class component. So we're going to import that, and here at the end, after our third button, we're going to use our card right here, as you can see. And actually, let's give this a little bit of style. So we're going to have simple border, which is 1 pixel, solid black, and maybe some paddings right here. Let's say we got 1 rem of padding, and actually it's nice to have some margins too. So let's say we add our margins again. 1 rem is good. And now here inside of this div, let's say we have the simple h2 right here, which again telling score for us. And here we want to use props. You know how we can use props. Here we're going to pass the props to the tag that we're using component in. So here we got this score prop right here, and we assign that with the value that we got. You know how to access the state. It's going to be this right here. Then we're going to have this state right here, and here we got our score. And again, we can come to this card and we can distract that or simply use our prop right here. And here again, we're going to have our curly braces and this prop, which inside of this, we're going to access to the score. Now you can see it's 12 right here. We can add, it's going to add right here, can decrease by this button, and we can do anything here in the parent one. And because we passing the state and not simple variable, it's going to change in this second component too. So until now, you should know how states work in both of functional and class components, and how we can create states, use states, and change the states values, and how to pass as prompts to other components. In the next video, we're going to talk more about event handling, which we use actually some of event handlings right here. You can see here we got some functions that we refer to, and here we got some handlers actually. These can be named handlers in React, which we're going to cover more detail in the next part. So subscribe to don't miss that video and the rest of our React crash course. And if this video was helpful, like and give me any questions that you have about states and React in the comments, and I'll answer them as soon as possible.